my name is Gudrun from GE Designs, and in this video I'm going to show you how to fussy cut fabric panels, or even embroidery blocks using my favorite tools, the Stripology squared rulers. The Stripology squared ruler is a smaller version of the Stripology XL, and it was basically designed to square up any block up to 12.5 inches, but it is excellent for doing any kind of fuzzy cutting. The Stripology mini ruler is a smaller version of the squared. It's great to do smaller things working with smaller blocks, so I'm going to show you how you can easily fuzzy cut fabric panels, and even embroidery blocks. So first off, I want to talk about the markings. So the markings on the ruler, you will start off by finding what do you want to fuzzy cut, what is the size you need. The white squares are for using 1/2 inch blocks, so 1/2 inch sizes. You will be using white squares and white lines. Black squares and black dotted lines are for whole inch sizes. So for example, I'm going to start by using the mini, and we're going to fuzzy cut this Eiffel Tower to use in a quilt. So I'm going to move this one out of the way. One of the tools that I love to use with these rulers, whether I'm squaring up blocks or fuzzy cutting or anything, are my GEasy ruler stickers. They come in 2 different packs of colors, 3 colors in each, and believe me, I use them all the time. So figuring out what size I want here for the Eiffel Tower, probably if I'm using it in a square position in a quilt, I would be cutting it to a 4.5 inch square. You could also do a rectangle easily, but I'm going to show you how to do the 4.5 inch square. So first off, I want to find the white 4.5 inch square on the ruler, and I've put my arrows on the 4 corners just to identify that square. And then I've also gone down from the corners of the square to indicate which slits I'm going to be cutting through. So I have put pink arrows on the slits where I need to cut. So each square will have a center line. You'll see the thick white center lines going through the center of the square. This is the exact center of the block. It also has the white dotted line going diagonally through the center. So this is what makes this so great for fuzzy cutting. So we want to center it on kind of the Eiffel Tower. So all I do is take this horizontal line here and vertical, place it right in the center of the Eiffel Tower, and then I can kind of identify, okay, how far from the edge is the bottom of the Eiffel Tower. This is about 1/2 inch here, and then I have about 1/2 inch up here because I'm looking at these 4 corners. So now it's perfectly positioned to cut it into a 4.5. So I just go into the slits where I had marked with the pink arrows. I make my 2 cuts, and then we turn it and position it again using that center line here and noticing where the edges. This is where I'm going to be cutting, and this is where I'm going to be cutting. The second thing we want to also do is make sure that the cut edge here is aligned with that horizontal line, so our piece will be absolutely square. And then we do the other 2 sides, and we come up with a square. So if you wanted to do a rectangle instead, that's very easy. You start off doing it shorter. So I started off trimming 3.5, and then I turned it and trimmed it on the 4.5. So very easy to do any kind of size square or rectangle. Now the mini ruler only goes up to 6.5 inches. So that is the largest you can use with this ruler. But of course, the original squared ruler, you can go all the way up to 12.5 inches. So I love this when I am fuzzy cutting fabric panels. If you want to cut them a certain size and use it in a quilt. So you could take a panel block and replace that with any pattern, just to replace a block with a panel block. And what I like to do when I'm cutting these kinds of panels up is kind of first check how big is the panel by using kind of the inner left side. So on the 0 slit and on the 0 line, I will kind of see, okay, this is about 9 inches. This block is 9 inches. I could also make it smaller and kind of cut it on inside that little plaid portion. So it could be as small as a 7 inches finished, so a 7.5-inch cut block, or I could make it even bigger and utilize some of that black around and make it as big as 10 inches. So that gives you lots of options for what kind of quilt you want to use this in. So one other thing I always want to do when I'm using blocks like this, because frames and lines like this printed on fabric are never going to be straight. So you never want to just go in and cut with scissors, because you're never going to have a perfect square that way. So I always look for space and try to either utilize the black around here, or I would cut somewhere in the middle here where I have some wiggle room. So when it's sewn into a quilt, you won't see a line that's half on, half in, half out throughout the quilt. So I would probably start with the outer. So let's say I'm going to trim this to a 10-inch square. So that will be a 9.5-inch finished block. You could also do a 9.5-inch finish, 9.5-inch trim for a 10-inch block. So let's just do 10, because I want to show you how to do the whole inch unit. So I'm going to start by placing my arrows on the 4 corners. So I find the 10-inch corner up here, and also on the opposite corner. So I'm following the black line. And then I want to go down here and go straight down to the 10. I'm just going to mark where I'm going to cut. So on the 10 and on the 0. So you'll notice even if you're using black lines and on this side, you still will have a diagonal black line going through the center. And then of course this is 10 inches. So your 5-inch line going this way and your 5-inch slit going this way is going to be your centers. So you can still use that if you need to center anything like I showed with the mini ruler. So now all I'm going to do is center those markings and on my block, and make sure that I'm about even distance from the edge of the block. As you can see, it's far from being straight, but I want to have a similar margin everywhere and kind of, make sure it's semi-straight. It's never going to be completely straight, believe me. This is fabric we're working with. So now I'm ready to make my cuts. I'm going to cut on the 10 and on the 0, and I don't want to cut too far, so I can also use the next one. Now this probably didn't go all the way through, so I can just finish it this way. And then I can just fold this up and turn my piece, and I can trim it the other way. So again, now I want to make sure that I use the 0 line along the bottom here, and then making sure that I have equal distance here from the inner frame. And this is looking pretty good. I can make my cuts, and I will have a perfectly square panel block to place into a quilt, replacing a piece block or throwing them in anywhere. But this is the best and easiest way to square up those panel blocks. One of my favorite things to use these rulers for is also if you do any kind of machine embroidery, other kind of embroidery, maybe embroidery with a lot of embellishments. The issue that we have when we're using regular rulers to trim these up is that when you place a regular ruler on top, it's gonna kind of topple on top if there's thickness in the block, which usually is with your embroidery. But what is beautiful about the Stripology rulers with the slits, they will just lift up wherever there's thickness inside the block, or even if with seams and things like that. So it will really hold everything in place. It will kind of push this down, so your block will be perfectly squared every single time. So I'm going to just use this center. It's hard to see on the white fabric, but I can see my center here. So here I'm thinking this is probably going to be an 8.5-inch, what I'm going to trim this to. So again, I want to place my arrows on the 4 corners. So now I have it marked here, and now we just want to make sure it's centered. I think the center of the block is right here. This is looking good. I have even space on both sides, and I can make my trims. And then I just turn And repeat on the other side, making sure that this cut edge is aligned with the bottom. And even distance on each side. There it is. And here we have our block ready to go into whatever you need to use it for. I hope you enjoyed learning how the Stripology squared ruler works so well for fuzzy cutting. The Stripology XL ruler, of course, has all of those squaring up lines and markings as well. However, the squared rulers are just so handy to grab, easier to maneuver, so they work best for me every time. Thank you for watching.